One of the most popular stories heard around Christmas time is the English classic A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, written in the 19th century.
It is too late, but I have come for your sake, Ebenezer.
You remember the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, a greedy businessman and a penny pincher. He was visited by three spirits, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. These spirits take Scrooge to see moments throughout his lifetime and make him squirm in terror. He reflects on who he was, who he is, and who he wants to be. We all have these moments of reflection and introspection when we critically assess our younger selves, our current state, and our next steps. In this episode, we bring you three personal stories. They represent life-changing events of the past, perplexing experiences of the present, and profound questions about the future. I'm Mabel Chan, and this is One in a Billion, a podcast about Chinese millennials in America. Maggie Shi comes from China to America for a new life with her husband. She's a hard worker and a big dreamer. A few months ago, she got some good news and bad news. Let her tell you what happened.
This past summer, I was promoted to be a sales manager. It's a target I had set for 2017. I was so thrilled to get this opportunity. It allows me to build up rapport with the clients face-to-face and travel internationally to bring business to our hotels all over the world. However, last October, I was told I would not be allowed to work beginning next March. It's a complicated immigrant visa issue. I've been working as a J2 spouse visa holder since my husband was hired by his company, a research lab. But his visa status will change soon from a J2, the exchange visitor, to H1B, the working visa. My company won't apply for the same working visa for me. It will take too long, at least 6 months. But I could wait to receive my green card, and that could take a year. It hit me very hard. I had so many plans to achieve more and get myself to the next level. I never planned to take a break, certainly not like this. I'd put so much effort to hit my goal during the past 2 years after I moved to America. It's like things are just beginning to turn better, but suddenly they have to end abruptly. I feel like I was punched in the stomach and fell to the bottom of a dark sea. It took me a while to process what's just happened to me, to overcome self-pity and put my worry to rest. I thought of an old Chinese saying, 船到桥头自然直. It's the Chinese equivalent to the American saying, you'll cross the bridge when you come to it. Maybe I've activated my inner defense and survivor instinct. I finally found my peace. I now see it as a temporary roadblock in my career life. I'm blessed to have all the support from my family, friends, and my colleagues. Everyone encourages me to take the time to do something I always wanted but have no time to do, like traveling, going back home to spend some quality time with my parents after I left for 10 years. I have dusted myself off also because I realized that I've quickly adapted to my new job responsibilities, and I feel confident about what I'm doing. I have met people and built up some connections, which means they might help me when I re-enter the job market in a year. Believe it or not, I feel that this major setback has actually changed my perspective on life. I have always felt unsettled and anxious and always wanted to prove myself and nervously took my job very seriously. I won't regret my past, but now it's time to see things through a longer lens and make some adjustments. I have decided to set a bigger goal, to be a resilient person, to embrace the uncertainties of life, and to experience the ups and downs with an open mind. I do not want to be blindly optimistic about my future, but be confident. I believe my abilities to overcome setbacks won't leave me, no matter what my job status or how people see me. They say everything happens for a reason. That reminds me of who I truly am and not to lose sight about what really matters in life.
Our second story comes from Joel Tsui. Like Maggie, Joel is mired in a similar kind of mess. It's about his visa status, but it's a predicament he's still dealing with as we speak. Here's Joel.
I really like the quote, "Don't give do what you want advice to do what you need people." It keeps my privileges and my disadvantages in perspective. So while last year was a lot about doing what I want, this year it's about doing what I need. I first came to the United States in 2012 for my undergraduate studies, specifically a bachelor in fine art. I graduated in 2016 and spent the past year looking for a way to stay in this country. Optional practical training led to nowhere. I couldn't get a work visa because of timing, and I'm definitely not considering marrying someone for a permanent residency, despite kind and somewhat serious offers from close friends. Time was running out, and 2 months before my optional practical training ended, I applied for graduate school. I'd always intended to go to graduate school, mostly because my mother instilled the importance of education to me at a young age. She had wanted me to go straight for my master's upon graduation, but I hesitated. I didn't think it would be beneficial for me to do so. I wanted to get a few years' worth of work experience and then decide what I should pursue my master's in. I'd considered transitioning into a different field, like business administration, since most working artists are synonymous to creative entrepreneurs. Or computer science, because I majored in new media and enjoy working with emerging technology. And MFA was kind of out of the question for me, because it didn't seem like I was getting much mileage in an increasingly freelance-based field. All that said, as of writing, I am currently an MFA candidate at an art school in Maine, while simultaneously pursuing a graduate certificate program in documentary studies. It was the fastest way I could guarantee being admitted into a graduate program. My first semester of art school season 2 was familiar and foreign at the same time. I fit comfortably in the studio environment and participated actively in lectures. During orientation, when it was my turn to introduce myself, "Tell us your name, where you're from, and why you're here," I had no problem saying, "My name is Joel, I'm from Hong Kong, and I'm here to continue exploring my undergraduate thesis and turning it into a 2-year project." I've created projects that I was proud of and had all the confidence to present them with passion. The work was well received and my peers enjoyed my presence. Yet something was off and I couldn't figure out what it was. It could have been the fact that my aunt was recently diagnosed with terminal cancer, 7,000 miles away from me with only a few months left to live. Or it could have been that my ex, who was studying in Florida, chose to break up with me over the phone the night before Hurricane Irma ravaged her college campus. I don't know. It wasn't until recently that I realized, while all of the above were contributing factors of my uncertainty, I was simply in denial. I didn't want my underlying motives to give an impression that I didn't care about my education, so I presented myself as like everybody else, grad student looking to teach at college level with my anticipated terminal degree, because that's what everyone does with their education, right? If I were to be completely honest with myself and others around me, I would have said, "My name is Joel, I'm from Hong Kong, and I've exhausted all options to stay in this country and build a career that I've longed for. Therefore, I'm here to give myself a bit more time."
In our last segment, we will hear from Justine Yan. She's a writer, a poet, and a teacher. What's weighing most on her mind? The future. Her concerns comes after an eye-opening and heartwarming visit to Xinjiang. She tells her story in 5 parts. Here's Justine.
1. In August, I let my friend dye my fingers blood red. I was in Kashgar, a small city in the far west of China. We bought henna powder from the bazaar and went to my air-conditioned hostel, where she mixed the powder with water until it became a dark brown paste. She then applied it carefully to each finger, up to my first knuckle, and wrapped a strip of plastic around it, tying it tightly. We waited for an hour as the henna soaked into my nails, my skin. "Your fingers will stay a deep red for a few weeks," she said. "But then the color will fade from your skin. It'll stay on your fingernails until they grow completely out." "How long will that take?" I asked her. She showed me her hands, light orange crescents at the very tips of her nails. She said, "This was 3 months ago." I nodded. I committed. I remember thinking, this is how long I'll carry Xinjiang with me. I can remember Xinjiang for at least this long. 2. Xinjiang is a territory almost 4 times the size of my home state of California. It's kind of China's Wild West. The Silk Road famously ran through it to the Middle East and Europe. For centuries, it was the empire's distant frontier, and it remains exotic and romantic in the Chinese imagination today. I was drawn to Xinjiang because I'd read about the Uyghurs, a Turkic Muslim minority who make up more than 40% of the population there. I learned that over the past few decades, they have been actively assimilated, denied political influence, and restricted from fully expressing their distinct culture. And I read that it was due to the Chinese government's fear of extremism, terrorism, and instability. But I wanted to see and feel Xinjiang for myself. So last summer, I took a 47-hour sleeper train from my parents' hometown on the eastern coast of China to Urumqi. I don't know how I expected to see all of Xinjiang in 3 weeks. I trudged up sand dunes in the eastern Xinjiang desert and touched the walls of ruins baked by the sun. I hiked the alpine lakes and sprawling grasslands of northern Xinjiang. But more often, I experienced the landscape with my eyes closed, riding in sleeper trains at night. As I fell asleep in my cot, I tried to imagine the scenery that I wasn't seeing. By the time I arrived in Kashgar, I was nearing the end of my trip, and I was tired. 3. In Kashgar, I had one friend, a former student of mine. She became my guide and my teacher. I couldn't speak any Uyghur, and most people in Kashgar don't speak much Mandarin. During the 4 days we were together, my friend and I took long walks throughout the city. She had never been inside a mosque before. She'd never explored the labyrinthine alleys of the old town. She'd never been to the livestock bazaar, because that's not where women normally go. During our walks, she talked to me as if she were an old woman recalling the distant past. She told me, "We used to use these wooden spoons to eat, but not anymore." Or, "When we were children, there were many pastries like this, but now they are hard to find." As if she were my grandmother and not 2 years younger than me. We tried not to discuss politics. There's nothing to be gained from complaining about the political situation. That's what so many well-educated young Uyghurs seem to believe. There are only personal decisions to be made, mistakes to avoid, brighter futures to be had as a result of achieving just the right balance between caution and courage. On my last day in Kashgar, before I was to fly back to the eastern Chinese metropolis, my friend said something that confounded me. She said, "It's interesting how we identify. I didn't feel like a Kashgar person until I went to Urumqi, and I didn't feel like a Xinjiang person until I left to the eastern cities. Maybe if one day I get to leave China, I can start to feel like a Chinese person, too." When I hugged her at the train station, I said I'd see her in America someday, but neither of us knew when that would happen. 4. 3 months and thousands of miles later, I'm still thinking about Xinjiang. I suppose that's the point of a long journey. Memory can be forgiving. With distance and time, things become easier to accept. They become a part of the past, and I get to move on. In September, I started as a graduate student in Southern California, pursuing an MFA in poetry. I get paid to teach composition to undergrads, and I have plenty of time to write. As a poet, I use my past as material. I write about my memories and experiences, but loosely, because I'm not a journalist and I'm not a historian. I intend for my poems to somehow transform the past, make the political personal, and maybe then, the personal might take on some more universal meaning. Last week, I read an article about tightened restrictions on Uyghur travel within China and abroad. I was hit with a pang of guilt. Why haven't I written about Xinjiang until now? It's winter. The henna dye on my fingers has grown out almost completely. What's left is just a sliver of the original memory, that afternoon in Kashgar, light orange crescents at the tips of my fingernails. 5. I've been thinking of a young Uyghur man I met while hiking in northern Xinjiang. An aspiring film director, a funny, intense, and kind young man. Last week, I sent him a message saying, "How's it going, 朋友? Friend." A few hours later, he responded, "Justine, I've been okay. Spending the last 2 days in Urumqi, had to take care of some matters. Returning to Shanghai today. Each time I come back to Xinjiang, I don't really want to leave. Even though the situation is not so good, when it's time to leave, I always feel a bit sad. How about you, sweet girl? You still writing poems?" "Yes, friend. I'm okay too. Yes, I'm over here writing poems, and you're over there, missing your home, but unable to stay there. And Xinjiang might be in my past, but it is your present, and perhaps also your future. And what could my poems ever mean for you? And what could they ever change?"
A big thank you to Justine Yan, Maggie Shi, and Joel Tsui. Their stories bring us close to the final episode of our Season 2. Season 3 will return in the summer of 2018. Pitch us a story for Season 3? Just go to our website at www.oneinaBillionVoices.org. Starting in January next year, we will launch a monthly event called Game Changers. It's a conversation and speakers series. Game Changers will focus on topics about choices and crossroads, decision-making, negotiation, and confidence building. We want to build a community for Chinese millennials and their friends as they tackle some of these tough issues in the workplace. We invite you to join us as a supporting member to help us sustain the cost of our events and podcast production for 2018. Our goal is to raise $25,000 by the end of the year. We are a public charity. Your donation is tax-deductible, and we appreciate your contribution at whatever level you can. Just go to our website at www.oneinaBillionVoices.org. Click Donate. One in a Billion is
Pallavi Katamasu,
Eric Liao,
Brian Latwinovich,
Sarah Zhu.
It is an independent production of One in a Billion Productions, a nonprofit educational media group in Kendall Square, Cambridge, Massachusetts.